I'm Aaron France, and I'm here to guide you through creating your first character for Dragonbane. By the end of this video, I'll have made a character here with you, and you'll know exactly how to make one of your own. At the end of this video, I'm also going to cover the 2 optional rules that your game master might ask you to use when creating your character: weaknesses and mementos. This video is going to be time-stamped throughout, so feel free to use those to jump around, and I'll also go ahead and throw up the page numbers of the rulebook that comes with the boxed version of the game, so you can use those for reference throughout the video. Any clarifications or just anything that I get wrong will be noted in the Klingon language subtitles, so go ahead, turn those on just in case you need to correct something later. With all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and let's get started. The first big decision we have to make is what kin our character is going to be. There are 5 options for us in the core rulebook, and whilst we could choose to be a human, there are also halflings, dwarves, wolfkin, and mallards. Each kin has their own history and their own culture, as well as their own innate ability that only that kin can use. The rulebook has a table for this, so if you're feeling unsure of which kin you want your character to be, you can roll on that to decide, but personally, I love the fact that Dragonbane has mallards, so rather than rolling on the table, I'm just going to go ahead and just choose to be a mallard. I mean, why wouldn't you want to be a duck? So now we decide to be a mallard, let's note down that we're a mallard on our character sheet, and we also need to note down the innate ability that mallards have. Whilst every other kin has 1 innate ability, mallards have 2. They're ill-tempered, meaning they can choose to become angry to get a boon on their roll. And they also have webbed feet, giving them a boon to all swimming rolls and an unreduced speed when moving in water. So now that we've noted down our kin and their innate abilities, it's time to move on to the next step, giving our character a name. Whilst this video is going to focus a lot on the big mechanical pieces of our character, their stats, their kin, their profession, etc., we shouldn't neglect the role-playing side of character creation. I mean, who is our character? What do they want? What's their history? Why are they even adventuring in the first place? And most importantly right now, what's their name? Now, if we want an authentic mallard-sounding name, there is a table of mallard names we can either just choose a name from or roll on to randomly select a name. For example, I'm going to roll, and it looks like our mallard is going to be called Quuxum. Of course, when you're creating your character, you're not constricted by the names in the rulebook, and you can select whatever name sounds fitting to you. The next decision we need to make is the profession for our character. Whilst every character is an adventurer, our character's profession represents the learnings and skills they've obtained from their life up until that point of setting out on adventure. There are 10 possible professions in the core rulebook, ranging from artisans to knights to seafaring mariners and the magic-wielding mage. What sets each profession apart? Well, each has a different set of profession skills that your character starts out stronger in. Your character's starting gear is also defined by their profession, and finally each profession starts with a different starting heroic ability. A special ability that changes the game or allows your character to do something extraordinary. Like I said, there are 10 options in the book that I'll leave you to explore on your own, but just to get a feel for them, I'll briefly describe 3 of them to you. The first profession is the merchant. Merchants barter, trade, and sell to earn their living. The profession skills are all related to charisma, bartering, bluffing, and persuading, but they also have a knack for being aware of their surroundings and for spotting hidden things. The only weapon skill merchants start with, though, is knives, so their profession is more focused around versatility than combat. Their heroic ability, Treasure Hunter, leans into the idea of merchants being driven by coin. At a crossroads, they can use their ability to learn which route leads to the greatest treasure. The second profession is the hunter. Hunters spend their time in the wilderness, hunting and trapping animals. Hunters' profession skills are all keyed around agility, acrobatics, sneaking, and hunting and fishing. They also have a knack for being aware of their surroundings and are skilled at surviving out in the wilderness. Hunters are far less restricted than merchants with their weapons. They start with both training in bows and slings as well as knives. Their heroic ability mirrors their bond with the wild and allows them to turn an animal into a companion who can follow them around and can even be used to scout or even attack enemies. Finally, there's the mage. Mages are a little different. They're the only profession that can use magic, and they're the only profession that doesn't start with a heroic ability. Instead of starting with a heroic ability, they start with some magic tricks and a set of magic spells. If you'd like to play as a mage, the skills your character is good at will depend heavily on the school of magic that you choose. We'll cover mages and schools of magic and all the rest of it more towards the end of this video, so if you want to use magic, make sure to stick around for that. I think it's worth noting that whilst each profession has their starting heroic ability and skills, the choice of profession goes far beyond the effect on your character's character sheet. If our character was an artisan, say a blacksmith, the people they meet in the Misty Vale will feel very differently about them than if they were, say, a thief. It's worth thinking about who you want to be as much as what skills you'd like to be good at or heroic ability you'd like to have. Character is a complete unit. If we don't want to choose a profession for our character, as always, there's a handy table we can use to randomly select a profession. But in this case, I think our mallard here will be a scholar. So I'll just simply write that down and make a note of the heroic ability that comes with scholars' intuition. Annoyingly, when you select your kin, the heroic ability is kind of written on the page for you. But in this case, we're going to have to look up the profession's heroic ability in the ability section of chapter 3. For our character, the heroic ability intuition gives us the ability to ask a question about a difficult decision directly to our game master. And it promises that we must receive a helpful answer from them, not something to quack about. We'll go ahead and we'll note down the name of the ability as well as the ability's effect on our character sheet. Now we have our character's profession figured out, this is a good point to think a little bit more about who our character is and give them a fitting nickname. The core rules have a table for each profession with 6 suggestions which should feel roughly right for someone from that line of work. After all, a knight will have a very different sort of nickname to that of a thief. Feel free to come up with your own nickname. The ones in the books are, after all, just suggestions, and it doesn't need to be connected to your character's profession at all. Your character could be an artisan, blacksmither, and be called Silvertongue, not because of anything to do with their line of work, but rather just because they had a knack growing up for talking their way out of anything. For our mallard friend Quuxum here, I like one of the choices in the table for scholar, and so I won't bother rolling, I'm just going to pick it. I like the idea of the nickname Farsight. Now we've got our character's kin, profession, and nickname, it's time to figure out how old they are. In Dragonbane, your character's age has an effect on how your character's stats are distributed, so this is where things get a little bit more complicated. To understand the effect of age, we'll have to have an understanding of how stats work in Dragonbane. So let's talk about those stats now. Like a number of other tabletop RPGs, characters in Dragonbane are made up of 6 main attributes: strength, constitution, agility, intelligence, willpower, and charisma. These attributes are generated by rolling dice and assigning the result to each attribute. The attributes then end up between 3 and 18, with 18 being the best. Those attributes then impact or just even outright define some of the other stats of your character. For instance, how far you can move on a turn in combat is defined by your movement stat. Your kin will define your base movement stat, but you'll either receive a penalty or a bonus to your movement on top, depending on how good your character's agility attribute is. Your character's hit points, or how much damage they can take before they drop to the ground and risk dying, is determined by your character's constitution. And similarly, your character's willpower points, the resource they spend to use special abilities or to cast spells, is determined by their willpower attribute. On top of that, characters with a high agility or high strength also receive a bonus to inflicting damage with weapons that use that attribute. The final way your character's attributes define the shape of your character is through skills. When your character confronts an obstacle or tries to do something particularly difficult, you'll be asked to make a skill test by rolling a 20-sided die and by comparing the result of the roll to your character's skill in that area. There are 30 skills, and the starting value for each of these is determined directly by your character's attributes. Each skill has a specific attribute that's associated with it. For instance, the bluffing skill is associated with charisma, and the acrobatic skill is associated with agility. The stronger your character is in that associated attribute, the stronger they'll start in that skill. Your character's skills, though, can be trained up, which just means that the skills start stronger than if you hadn't trained them. However, the better your character's associated attribute is for that skill, the better the trained skill ends up as. The important takeaways here are that your character's key stats like hit points, movement in combat, and bonus damage are all connected to a related attribute. If there are skills that you want to be good at, it's important that the attribute related to that skill is strong, and that training skills makes them better, but the better an attribute is to begin with, the stronger the trained skill will end up. Now we have an overview of how attributes affect our character, we can talk again about age. We don't worry about the exact specifics of a character's age, because the lifespan of a character depends heavily on which kin they are, so we classify them as either adult, young, or old. Young characters receive a bonus to their constitution and agility, boosting those attributes, but they won't train as many skills, which represents their lack of accumulated experience. They'll only train the 6 skills associated with their profession, and 2 additional skills of their choice. Adult characters receive no attribute bonus, but train 4 skills of their choice in addition to their 6 profession skills. Old characters receive a penalty to strength, agility, and constitution attributes, but gain a bonus to their intelligence and willpower attributes, representing their accumulated life experience, but also their diminishing physical ability. They also get to train an extra 6 skills of their choice in addition to their 6 profession skills, giving them 12 skills to train total. Because of the change to their attributes, young and old characters have an interesting effect on the derived stats of their character, like hit points and movement speed. If you aren't feeling confident about the character creation process, I'd heavily recommend picking an adult character. That would just make things a little bit more straightforward because they don't have any attribute bonuses or penalties to worry about. For our example though, our character Quaxum will be young, so we can see how changing those attributes plays out into character creation. If you enjoy the more random side of character creation, or have just been rolling every opportunity so far, there's a table you can roll on to determine how old your character should be. Now it's time to roll for our attributes. It's important to note that there are tons of methods out there, so it's possible a group might have a slightly different way of doing this. The way I'll be doing it here is the same way it's outlined in the rulebook, but as long as your group agrees and everyone does it the same way, it's totally okay to do it a different way. The way that's outlined in the rulebook is as follows. Roll 4 standard 6-sided dice, remove the lowest value, and then immediately count up the result and assign that to an attribute. However, once an attribute has a value assigned to it, you can't change that, which means there's a little bit of gambling involved. If you roll a 15 or a 14, do you want to put that towards an attribute that's really important to you? Or do you want to hope something better comes along and hold out for that, knowing that it's possible it might not come up? And this is the point that if you have any bonuses or penalties to attributes, that you'd also add them on. Just note that if you have a bonus or a penalty, you can't reduce an attribute below 3 and you can't increase it above 18. So let's do this together. I'm going to roll 4d6 that I have here. Here we've got a 6, a 3, a 2 and a 1. So we discard the 1 as the lowest value, leaving the 3 remaining dice giving us a total of 11. Now you just need to pick an attribute to assign it to. If we look at our profession, we can see what the key attribute for that profession is. The key attribute isn't just a mechanic, it doesn't really do anything other than tells us which attribute we're going to want to make as high as possible because the skills our profession trains up depend on it. For our character Quaxum, as he's a scholar, the key attribute is intelligence. 11, well, that's an okay roll, but not a great one, so I'm not going to put that towards our key attribute just yet. Instead, I'm going to put this 11 towards our character's willpower. Let's try another roll. Our next roll is a little bit better. 6, 6, 2 and a 1. If we drop the lowest value, that gives us 14. Let's put that towards strength, as that's high enough to get us a damage bonus using strength weapons. Our next roll is a 5, a 4, a 3 and a 1. Dropping the lowest value, that gives us 12. If we put that towards constitution, because we're a young mallard, we'll get a +1 bonus giving us a total of 13. The next roll is a 6, a 5, a 4 and a 4. Dropping the lowest gives us a good score of 15. Let's put that towards our key attribute, intelligence. I won't bore you with rolling the rest, but at the end we end up with scores like this. Strength of 14, constitution of 13 including a +1 bonus, agility of 13 including a +1 bonus, intellect of 15, willpower of 11 and charisma of 16. You can see that our charisma ended up being the highest score, and that's part of the fun of assigning attribute scores in this way. If we had gambled right until the end, we would have got our 16 for our key attribute, but instead our last assigned score ended up being our best and we played a little bit safer. But looking at our attributes, Quaxum ended up being a bit of an all-rounder anyway. Now we've got our attributes, the rest of our character begins to fall into place. First we need to figure out our movement. How many meters our character can move in a round of combat. Character's initial movement comes from their kin. In our case, mallards get 8. Then we add a bonus or penalty depending on our character's agility attribute. Quaxum's agility is 13, which gives us a bonus 2 movement. If we add that all together, we get a total movement of 10 meters. Next, we need to determine if our character has a damage bonus when they use either strength or agility weapons. To do so, we need to look at our character's strength and agility attributes. They need to be over 12 for us to get a bonus, and well, Quaxum's strength is 14. That gives him enough to get a d4 bonus damage using strength weapons. And Quaxum's agility is 13, which is just over 12, and enough to give him a d4 of bonus damage using agility weapons. Now, if either the agility or strength had been 17 or 18, they'd get a d6 instead of a d4, which is a nice chunk of extra damage. And if that's something that you can prioritize when you create your character, it's worth doing so. Now we think about their hit points and their willpower points. The total number of hit points a character has is simply equal to their constitution. In our case, Quaxum has 13 hit points because they have a constitution of 13. Similarly, the total number of willpower points a character gets is equal to their willpower attribute. One last thing to calculate here is our character's encumbrance, or how much stuff they can carry. A character's encumbrance is equal to their strength, halved and then rounded up. Well, Quaxum's strength is 14 and half of that is 7, meaning Quaxum can carry a total of 7 average-sized items. We're on the home stretch. There aren't many blank boxes left on our character sheet now, so let's fill in our character's skills. We'll start by training the skills our character will specialise in. Once we've trained those skills, the rest are easy to fill in after that. If you remember from earlier, The number of skills you can train depends on the age of your character. No matter your character's age, it will train 6 skills from the list provided by their profession. But in addition to that, young characters train another 2, adults train 4, and old characters train 6. Those extra skills are a free choice by the player, so you can choose whatever you want, unrestricted by your profession. We'll start though by training our character's profession skills. For our character, as they're a scholar, that means picking 6 of the following skills to train: awareness, beast lore, bushcraft, evade, healing, languages, myths and legends, and spot hidden. To figure out which skills you can choose from, look at your profession's page in the rulebook. Remember though, you don't train all of these, only 6 from the list. To figure out the value of a trained skill, look at the connected attribute. For awareness, for instance, it's intelligence. You can tell by the abbreviation in the brackets next to the skill on their character sheet or in the rulebook. Then you consult this table to figure out the base chance of success. Our character's intelligence of 15 gives them a base chance of 6 in the awareness skill. However, we're training this skill. For trained skills, whatever the base chance is, double it. That's the final trained value of the skill. 6 doubled is 12, so Quaxum has an awareness of 12. I'm going to quickly do that for 6 of the scholar's professional skills, leaving our character sheet looking like this. Now, depending on your character's age, like I described earlier, you'll have a number of skills that you can train as a free choice. Our character is young, which only gives them 2 free skills to train. Dragonbane is a game with plenty of adversaries to fight, so if you haven't trained at least one weapon skill so far, I'd recommend training at least one of those. For our character, I'm going to train swords to help them in combat, and bluffing, because Quaxum's charisma is their best attribute, and it's always helpful to have someone who can bluff their way out of a situation. Finally, now it's time to fill in all the non-trained skills. To do that, fill in just the base chance for the skill based on its connected attribute. Don't double it, because these skills haven't been trained. Each profession has 3 different sets of starting gear you can choose from, listed on their professions page in the rulebook. You can either go ahead and roll to select which set of gear your character starts with, or you can simply choose. Our character Quaxum has trained up in using a sword, so let's choose the set of gear that has the sword. Any equipment like swords or shields goes in the held equipment section, anything else is listed in your inventory section, except currency, which you simply note down. We are almost at the finish line. Whilst you're still watching, if you found this video helpful so far, please go ahead and hit the like button. And if you're interested in Dragonbane or just RPGs in general, go ahead and hit the subscribe button too. Before we're done, we need to make a few last decisions about who our character is. Specifically, we're thinking about their appearance and any important motivating history for them. To do that, we'll think about their age, think about what they're good at, and think about their attributes. Is your character frail or full of constitution? Are they nimble or are they strong? What is their profession? With that in mind, we should be able to picture their appearance and maybe have a few thoughts on what they did prior to being thrown into adventure. Our character Quaxum is young, has a good constitution, and is trained with a sword, but little else. I reckon he looks a little tidy and spends a non-trivial amount of time making sure he stays that way. He's young and a scholar, so he's probably just finished studying at some school and is looking to make his mark on the world. I'll note that down, and now we're done. Unless your group is using the rules for mementos or weaknesses, or you're interested in learning about mages, you now know officially everything you need to make a character, and you can end your journey in this video here. If your group is using the optional rules, you'd like to make a mage, or you just want to learn more, let's keep going. Let's start with the optional rules. There are 2 optional elements for character creation. First, mementos. Mementos are small personal items that take up no inventory space and have sentimental value to your character. You can use this item whilst taking a rest to restore an additional condition once per session. You can choose one you think would be fitting for your character, but there's also a table of them you can roll on to randomly select one. For our character, I've rolled and Quaxum has an old ragged hat passed down from his father. Weaknesses are the second optional rule. They represent a difficulty for your character that gets them into trouble. It's there to add depth and personality, and can be used by your game master to create challenges for your character. Playing to your weakness also gives you another way to earn advancement marks to improve your character over time. Examples of weakness include being intolerant, greedy, or gullible. You can come up with your own, but I'd personally recommend either selecting or rolling on the table of ones provided, as coming up with a weakness that allows for depth but also doesn't overtake a session is a tricky proposition, especially if everyone else has their own weakness too. Quaxum, I've decided, is gluttonous. He just can't stop letting his desire for food overruling his better senses. Alright, let's end this video talking about the big one. Mages. Once you've chosen mage as your character's profession, you must also select a school of magic. In the core game, that's either animism, elementalism, or mentalism. Each of these schools has a different set of associated spells and different trained skills. Once you've selected your school, that'll define which set of professional skills you train during that part of the character creation process. One of the skills will either be animism, elementalism, or mentalism, depending on the school you chose. This is a secondary skill which is only available to mages of that school and is used when casting spells of that school, or general spells, spells without a school. You don't note down any of the other secondary magic skills on your sheet. For example, if my character had animism, I wouldn't note down elementalism or mentalism. Your character only starts with one school of magic. Once you've trained your skills, you'll also want to go ahead and select 3 magic tricks and 3 rank 1 spells. These magic tricks and rank 1 spells can be from general magic or the school you chose earlier, but can't be from any other school. The last thing we need to note down on our sheet is how many spells our character can have prepared. There's a difference between spells you've learned and spells you've prepared, which I won't be covering here in detail. However, even though we're not covering that difference right now, it is important to calculate how many spells you can have prepared when you create your character. You calculate this by taking your character's intelligence attribute and calculating the base chance for it, like we did earlier for our character skills. This number is equal to the number of spells you can have prepared and should be written down somewhere on your sheet. If you want a quick way to look this up, you can take an intelligence skill like, say, awareness or seamanship, and if you didn't train it, the number of spells you can prepare will be equal to that. You'll still want to note it down separately on your sheet because the number of spells you can prepare will possibly change over time and your skills will improve over time as well. That's it for this video. Now you should have all the knowledge you need to make your own character, or if you fancy you can use Quaxum. After all, we made them together. I'll make sure Quaxum's character sheet is linked in the description below. If you are interested in learning more about Dragonbane, go ahead and subscribe for more videos about the new bestiary, the new core rulebook, and if you're a game master, my upcoming video on how to run the Secrets of the Dragon Empire campaign. I also review and preview other RPGs, so watch out for those as well. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you again next time.